Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you all had a restful weekend. So today we begin this week's session with the topic of unlocking profit from payment. Last week, as you know, we had a thoughtful, informative, and very interactive discussions with our speakers. And thank you very much for participating in that. Our participation last week, across all channels, peaked almost 300, with many more people wanting to come in, but for reasons we could not get them in. So that problem has been resolved now. With many more people participating in these discussions, we are getting stronger in our resolve to fight the virus. A thought and thank you for the frontline warriors like medics and police who are fighting a war to prevent the spread of virus and to protect us. Thank you so much. Today, we welcome Mahesh. Mahesh, welcome to today's session.
Thank you, KK, and thank you, EPS. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. As usual, it's going to be of interest when Mahesh speaks with his vast knowledge in the field of payment uh, in India and globally. As you know, Mahesh is a global head for FIS. Uh, so Mahesh, let me get in directly into the question session. So fueled by UK's PSD2, that is the UK's law for payment infrastructure, and open banking initiatives around the world, the account-to-account based payments will likely, I think, will likely challenge and eventually perhaps replace card payments. You know, so which means there is a transition that we see happening perhaps from cards to from cards to other digital means. Uh, is that going to happen? And will it happen in India too? That card bill usage will see a decline.
Yeah, thank you, and Eid Mubarak to everyone. I think it's a very auspicious day, and it's obviously good to be back on air here. So, KK sir, I think you put out a very relevant point. World over, utilizing the migration, I would say, or the movement from cards to account, direct to account transfers and usage and purchases are starting to gain. India's great platform on UPI has seen the kind of growth that it is allowing it. And the fact that UPI combined with the QR code and a lot more opportunities as a platform has started seeing good adoption, fantastic adoption, and year-on-year growth has been significant. So where does it leave the card transactions and the card-based transactions? I would say that at least over the next visible 3 to 4 years, you will see card transactions continuing to coexist with direct to account. The utilization and the usage of non-card-based transactions and approach are going to start morphing itself into the digital pay more, I would say, ingrained into the way we do purchases and the way we do our transactions. So to put a point of view, I would say we will have cards over the next 3 to 4 years. It's not going to disappear. You will have cards morphing itself into various forms. Direct to account are going to definitely take shape. It's interesting to see that even large card issuers like MasterCard, Visa are investing on real-time payment platforms and are starting to invest themselves in large ecosystems that are being set up for countries. So which means that the way forward moves away from cards and that bridge is going to take some time to pass. So I would say in the meanwhile, both of them will coexist. People will have the choice depending upon what they want to use and depending upon the acceptance at the front end. I think that is going to be very critical for you.
Okay. So you think this is going to also happen in India?
It will. I'm saying is, to me, at the end of the day, India has not been a great credit market if you look at it. Our credit card growth compared to the debit growth is minuscule. Debit is about 7x to 8x in terms of volumes and in terms of issuance. I don't think majority of where the population coming out for the next 18, 24 months are going to be fairly credit worth. There is going to be credit challenges also. So I do see that there is going to be the growth of credit card may be stunted, but the growth of debit and prepaid will be there for the immediate.
Yeah.
And UPI and all other transactions for low value purchase and everything will start to gain steam. I would say it's all about the ease of the front end, and you will find more innovation similar to Google Pay coming up, and WhatsApp Pay anytime, launch anytime. It's been over delayed. Facebook making some very good forays coming in. So these are going to be some very game changers, and a lot of people will ride on the underlying platforms. And hopefully with RBI pushing through the agenda of the NUE, the new umbrella entity, which brings in competition, brings in new technology, brings in new players in the space. It's going to be interesting space to watch over the next 18 to 24 months.
Yeah. So I like that what you use the word morphing. I think card payment companies will definitely start morphing to other payment channels. So that's why there's no wonder the card networks and those perhaps looking to challenge them are battling it out to invest, buy, or take over control of companies that play a significant role in account payments. I think Visa announced in early 2020 that it is buying out financial services called Plaid, and so did Mastercard by buying out Nets. So you see this change happening when the cards companies themselves realize that they need to change, and I think that's is going to say. So Mahesh, do you see a lot of investment by payment companies into open banking infrastructure rather than cards?
Oh yeah, absolutely. In fact, I would be, I would say that I've been in the thick of actions across other geographies where we've really fast tracking a lot of the open banking initiatives, and we've been sort of creating an entire infrastructure which supports open banking, which means that a lot of the neobanks, digital banks who come in, their ability to pay as you use the open banking services are going to be the name of the game. So you're going to see definite changes. We also have an open banking capability in India. It's just that the way it is being utilized, the way it is being exercised to sort of enhance the transaction capabilities are probably not yet there. But I do see, if you come back to the India context, huge, a lot of the payment companies, a lot of the forward-looking banks will start to utilize some of the open banking capabilities, API-based transaction capabilities to their advantage, because that's going to be the differentiator. How quickly are you going to bring in new partners on board? How quickly are you going to enable services to clients? I think those are going to be a lot of differentiators. So open banking is going to give you twofold: agility, and it is going to give you the speed of product launches and the speed of onboarding new partners to give you a better customer experience.
Yeah. So we did talk about many of the banks wanting to tie up with fintech companies, and you see that as a reality that's going to happen in the future.
Absolutely. So if you ask me, KK sir, I think as we move into the fast pace of how life will change, banks need to start, I would say, rather than will need to say, there's some imperative now. They will need to start to understand. I think they have to go back to the drawing board in terms of what their architecture looks like. What's their enterprise strategy looking like? Where are their core to their business models, and where do they want to focus? Everyone can't play in all the spaces, right? So that's not going to be the game. But so what will happen is they will start picking up 2 or 3 players with whom they can do partners, not vendor relationship, but a partner relationship. The moment you move yourself into a partner relationship, both the partner who's providing the service and the bank will start to collaborate in terms of how they bring innovation to the table. And it will always become 1:many, right? Because today, I would see that kind of a change will morph itself. Most of the banks will control their business strategy. They will control their tech architecture. They will control their integration capabilities, and more importantly, we'll try and see what best they can give in terms of retaining customers and creating that intelligence behind by the data that comes into them. I think that's where they will start to morph themselves.
Okay. So before I continue with my discussions with Mahesh, may I request participants to start to use the Q&A box and put in your questions. Since the number of participants are increasing day by day, I would request participants to put in your questions early because otherwise I run out of time, and we don't really want to hold back our guests beyond 4 o'clock. So please put in your questions. That's one observation I wanted to make. The second observation I want to make to all the participants is that we are, EPS is a proud sponsor of Roti Bank. Roti Bank is an NGO organization which provides food to the needy in India. At the end of the session, we'll play a short video so you get to know about Roti Bank and how proud EPS is of this association with Roti Bank. So coming back to our discussions, Mahesh, like payment companies, banks have made investments in modernizing the payment infrastructure. Many of the banks have already done quite a lot. However, there is a flip side to this. These investments have not been able to drive revenue and growth, according to me. Maybe I'm wrong, but what could be the major reasons behind the banks not banks failing to drive the ROI?
It's a very interesting, long-winded answer could be there, but let's try and keep it as focused as possible. So I would say when banks start to see competition, they end up starting to look at what is the best way to modernize. They end up looking at where competition is looking to offer or what's new in the horizon. And the whole process of beginning to invest and try to bring on board new features, services, takes them anywhere between 6 to 8 months, right? 6 to 8 months, or sometimes it's about a year. What happens in this whole space, in this elapsed time, you're going to have situations where the market starts moving. The market continuously evolves. And when the market evolves and there is competition also evolving, you start to lose the mover advantage and start becoming a me too. So I think in that space, I would personally, and having been a banker myself, now in a tech company, it would be very interesting if banks, like I said, look to see what's core to their whole strategy. And when I see it core to their strategy, whether it is in terms of business, their technology, their processes, their engagement, their partner frameworks, a lot of things you can look at. And more importantly, the whole customer experience they're looking at. Once you identify what's core to them and what's not core to them, I think they should change the game in terms of identifying 3 or 4 partners with whom they are going to work. And that partner is not just going as a Me Too service, but partner who will continuously stay invested with them in continuously modernizing the services. There is always a rule, right? 80% will be what you'll always be like under Me Too. A mobile banking is a mobile banking, but it's always about saying, what do I change in that mobile banking, whether from an experience perspective, from a new service, and an agility perspective to bring in new capabilities. So banks will now need to have that kind of glue with the partners who going to stay invested, and then start to quickly rolling out capabilities and services. It may be very incremental, but that's the whole game plan. Because if banks start to keep investing and keep managing obsolescence and trying to catch up, it's always going to be a catch-up game. They will never make the money out of it. So it is important to say what's core to them, what's non-core, identify what are the kind of plays where they need to go out, get on board the right kind of partners. And when I say it's not just fintech players, it could be even players like a retail supermarket. It could be a player in a different space. It could be a player who's looking at a very differentiated business model, but doing more front-ended. But
Yeah.
that's where the difference is going to lie for any bank to make break-evens on their whole models. And you can't depend on only one player. Means again, you risk yourself if you put everything on one basket. You will have to start figuring out as to how you're going to be having one or two players where you start to use both of them as players to service the customer range. I think that's important. To me, if banks, if they have to break even in the immediate and the long term run, and be at the same time be savvy in terms of continuously improving, continuously staying ahead of the curve, they need to have partnership models which work for them. They cannot always say everything is in-house, everything is going to be ROI driven by keeping things just churning the game inside. I think that's not going to be a play ahead, especially in payments, because the pace of change and the rate of change is dramatic. So that's my 2 cents to it.
Yeah, thanks. So I think you touched upon a very important aspect of that. Banks will have to tie up with not only in fintech companies but some other players, and we see that happening. Citi and Goldman are tying up with Amazon in the world. So that's definitely happening. Also, you touched upon the fact that banks will have to look at partnership with some of these outside players like fintech companies. And I think the era of perhaps a vendor relationship will kind of die down, and more of partnership perhaps will come through, isn't it, Mahesh?
Absolutely. No, that's why I carefully chose the word partners and not vendors.
Yes, I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah, because see, we have to evolve the kind of contractual commitments that we made. And many a times, I always believe that when you have a long-term, large revenue contracts that you sign up to, you need to know how both the bank and the partners come together to stay invested by investing, say, X amount of dollars, X amount of rupees, year-on-year basis on creating innovation, and what is the ROI on that. And when both stay invested in that kind of an ROI model, it'll be very interesting because you're going to have far-reaching technologies being brought in quite quickly and being saying, can I get success out of it? And many a times, KK said, one thing that I've noticed is you have to quickly launch, test drive it, check on success, or move on with it. Otherwise, you will just stay invested and putting large technology frameworks only to find it's not profitable. So that cycle of pulling, test driving it and making sure it works or then scale is very critical.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think you brought that investment and keeping yourself agile to the market needs and seeing whether it makes sense, those kind of technologies are very important. So coming back to that same point, Mahesh, so what are your recommendations to banks to optimize cost and maximize revenue in the given scenario?
So I think very important for banks to now, when I start with, again, go back to my point of, look at what they have from a business strategy perspective, look at what's core business models that you want to play with. And then when you do it, you have to say what's the investment strategy associated with it and who's going to co-invest with them. At the end of the day, even fintech partners are not going to be partners who are just going to say, okay, give me some X amount of transaction cost and I'm going to play with that. That's probably not the way forward. When you have large relationships emerging, you will have to say how going to be revenue sharing models. No, in some cases, revenue sharing has not worked, but in many cases it will work because that's when you're going to be a skin in the game and trying to play with it. And you're also going to be looking to grow that line of business. So I think, to me, a couple of areas, banks, they have to morph their strategy to make it more clear about what they will control and what they expect. Once they do that, then they will start to say that where they invest and what is the return they would expect from that investment, and what they would partner, and what is the money and what is the money through the pipe that they will get from that partnership. and hence to try and see how are they going to collaborate to create that kind of right experience. Now, if they have to start thinking it very differently, traditional banking, keeping on launching repeated same kind of Me Too products may not start cutting the ice much, because they will start to need to think fairly, I wouldn't call it out of the box, but radical. That's what I would call it. They have to think slightly radical into, say, like every bank need not have an ATM footprint. Everyone need not have a POS footprint. But everyone may have the people may have very differentiated mobile experiences, which they can go and tie up with, say, a D-Mart of the world, or say, some other shopping complexes or Amazons of the world, to be able to make it much more subtle. And that differentiator could probably take them suddenly up there in terms of their revenue models, could start creating better experiences.
Okay. Yeah. So you did touch upon this kind of revenue model when you talked, where you said maybe they should have a revenue sharing model or some other thing. So one of the models we have had is transaction-led models. So you pay per transaction or pay per document or some such thing. And you also have this data-driven value that is out there. So do you think data-driven value-added services may be the way forward? Uh, can you give us some use cases to illustrate how banks can leverage payments data as part of the revenue stream, if it is possible?
It's very interesting, because today when you see what's the biggest stream that every tech guy is looking at, data science, right? That's the most emerging theme that's happening everywhere. And where does the end of the day, where does all this data go and sit? It all sits in the banking servers, right? Each fintech player has his part of the game. It doesn't have the whole visibility. It all sits at the end of the day where their account relationship exists, and which means it's the issuer and hence the bank with whom he or she is still banking with. So it will be very interesting as to how banks now, as a part of this collaboration, start to layer the data analytics viewpoint associated with it. And using the data analytics, it's about how you do very specific target, I would say, opportunities to cross-sell and upsell. Let an example and give you now some examples which I keep when I go to Amazon, or then I get to Facebook. Very interestingly, you start seeing the kind of relationship they have established between themselves is so strong that you start to see the pages getting customized for you, right? You are constantly reminded of the fact that, hey, you came in here before for this. Are you still wanting to look at it? Are you still wanting to pick it up? The subtle messages keep throwing up in front of you in your screen. What's going to be important now is the third dimension is how is the bank going to contribute here, right? If the bank says, you know what, this guy buys, say, electronic once in 3 months. I'm taking my own use case. If the dude keeps buying, say, electronics once in 3 months or once in 4 months, and I now see he's probably past that situation. He's coming into that situation, and that's why he's gone and looked up on Amazon for a particular, say, one electronic device. And very interesting, can I have, say, I bank with a premier bank, can that premier bank suddenly throw up a small connect on the Facebook, which essentially says, you want to buy? I will probably use 50% of your loyalty points to pick it up. Do you want to do this? Now, if you start to play a game there, it will probably entice the customer to say, hey, you know what? I never used my loyalty points. That's a fantastic opportunity because I have moved away from that purchase only because I was thinking twice whether I need to spend there or not. But the moment a bank drives a data-driven approach to say that this guy has that ability, he knows it, he wants to buy, and that's his pattern, and I'm offering in a value-add capability through a certain either I'm just taking a use case of a loyalty and dumping it there. The probability of purchase increases, right? He moves from probably at 10% to suddenly 50%. So that probability of purchase is going to trigger a spend, trigger some income, and trigger a cost share and revenue sharing across. So that's what I say. So at the end of the day, it's all about once you create that integration, create that kind of data-driven models, you will start seeing an increase in spend. And the moment you start increase in spend, slowly but
Yeah.
steadily, you will see the transaction volumes going up, and hence all your entire value proposition increases.
Okay.
I'm giving you an example. I'm saying there are many examples that can float. Now, this is just, I take my own use case of how I start getting enticed into purchases. But yes, I'm saying you can, depending upon if it's a housewife who's doing it and they know the demographics associated, why can't you just pop up something which says from DMart, I send you this, right?
Okay.
This is what you purchase on a day-to-day basis. Do you want to do it? So these are some models which will emerge. Because at the end of the day, banks have that data, and the collaborative effort between the banks and their partners is what is going to change the game.
Okay. Yeah. True. Okay. So I think we should look forward to this collaboration post-COVID. I think interesting times are ahead of us. I'll take a question from some of the participants. So one question, so it will be a little deviation from the story we are leaving. So in the current emotions of global to local emphasis, okay, so his question is, in the current emotions of global to local emphasis, do you see foreign investment coming to set up payment systems in India in the next 6 to 8 months?
Yeah. See, there is definitely, I would say, a bit of challenged outlook in the next 6 to 12 months. But if you look at India as a macro view, I would say that this will only turn the positive side over the next 18, 24 months, right? I would not sell 6 to 12, but 18 to 24 months. Anyone who's looking at investment will jump ship and come straight here, I would say. They will jump. They will, as long as the right framework, the right kind of, I would say, SOPs are given to them to come in, and they have it at the right valuation now. I wouldn't be surprised if some of the large entities come in and start to put in money, because whatever they put in money is not going to be just they're not going to put the money all in just in 2 months or 3 months. It's going to be over a period of time, right? I would personally believe that there is going to be a huge inflow of money coming in, probably the next 12 months onwards, and it's going to be there. It would be incorrect of any one of us to think that's not going to come in. This is going to come back in different forms and shapes, and you've just seen a recent collaboration coming in. You're only going to see many more.
Oh, that's good. That's very optimistic and positive thinking. Let's hope that happens, and we have a lot more investments coming in. The leaders are. So as you know, Mahesh, we also have participants who can ask you questions directly. So are you okay to direct questions from the participants?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay. So we have Mr. Tripathi from ETV. He wants to ask you a direct question.
Good afternoon, Mr. Ramamoorthy.
Good afternoon, Tripathi.
I just wanted to ask you one thing, if you can just demystify this thing for common man. There are certain issues with regard to MDR charges and their limits, and whether they are applicable to credit cards and debit cards, and how differently they are applicable to credit and debit cards. And what are the advantages of these new mode of payments have, like Paytm, PhonePe, Google Pay, over the earlier digital payments method like cards and debit cards and ATM cards. Can you show some light? What are the charges like, and how the situation will evolve from here?
See, right now, if you look at it, Tripathi, the government had stepped in and have issued certain very specific guidelines in terms of how the MDR is essentially, they had clamped down on the MDR. Now, why did they clamp down? They clamped down, not clamped down, that's a harsh word, but I would use the word that they have essentially normalized the whole MDR regime from two perspectives. One, They wanted to promote digital payments. They wanted to have more people moving towards the platforms like usage of direct to account, a lot of mobile to mobile payments emerging, and a lot of wallets kind of payments coming up. So I would say that yes, this did lead to a lot of I would say requests from a lot of the payment service providers to ask the government to reconsider. My belief is that as on the back end of whatever we've done, if the government has to start pushing through more of digital payments, and there are going to be players in the market who needs to enhance the front end, I would say acceptance area, the acceptance criteria, so you will see that government will come to a reconsideration. I do hope so. And we will try and say whether it's a much more better field for players to come in. Right now, my answer is, obviously banks and acquirers have to relook at their models, are being forced to relook at their current pricing models and how's the money coming through the door. So it is a bit of a stress point today. My answer is there will be a reconsideration, and once a reconsideration happens, it's all about saying how will the payment companies and banks push for more digital payments, and hence try and leverage the balances coming into the account to the bank's advantage. I think if you look at it today, now once you have a UPI, you get more and more account-based funding that you have. So your CASA account base starts to go up. Then obviously the government says you take something out of it and manage yourself. Do not come to me. And that's one of the options that the government is looking at. So I would say that at this moment, the party it's a bit of a wait and watch. I think on the back of what we're seeing in the next couple of months or 3 months, you will see hopefully some relaxations coming through, or there are going to be new opportunities that the players will look to seek from the government to enhance this play. It's a bit of a long-winded answer, but the short answer is it's a bit of wait and watch today, because for sure, the government will look at it at the back end of what we will be going through today.
I have a follow-up question. These companies like Paytm, PhonePe, Google, what is their pricing model? How much money they make out of these transactions? And whether are they profitable right now, or will they start making profit in future? Because they are pumping in a lot of money. Obviously, consumer is not required to pay anything for these transactions. But how companies are making money, or how they will make money?
So I'm not here to tell what money Paytm makes, but yes, so today, all I would say that they are obviously having the ability to run this, because what is more important for them is to create the base, right? At the end of the day, if you have more and more customers on their platform, signed up to their platform, you have more and more customers signing up to their wallets or signing up to their into their platform, and they have a larger merchant base coming to play, you're going to just move the money within themselves, and that's what they're looking at the end of the day. So it's going to be more closed loop rather than going outside. So at the end of the day, it's all about how you're going to manage the money flowing in the system. I would not want to comment on how much money they make and what it is. I think there are enough and more, I would say, checks and balances that is done by the Reserve Bank to make sure if what they do is right or wrong. I think that's where. But yes, the name of the game is if you're not making money and just spending money, something is wrong somewhere.
Absolutely. Thanks, Mr. Tripathi, for asking your question. Like Mahesh has said, there are many participants, and this debates are getting very interactive. So may I request Harish Prabhu, who's a very experienced banker, to ask a question directly to Mahesh?
Yeah, so in part he has already answered it, but nevertheless, see, in my sense is that world over payments, is moving towards digital forms, right, largely, and the user experience is very good. So today you can actually, conduct a money transfer via digital payment method as well as a e-commerce transaction in a jiffy. Hence, uh, so the getting payments to be compensated for the service provider, right, on a standalone basis is always going to be a challenge, because I think everybody's trying to move payments to a relegated essential infrastructure, right, rather than, payments as a service, right? So how does one, so if a payment company, is providing this digital banking payment services, how do they get compensated? I only see that, ATM and cash companies, right, who provide actually, the cash moment, they will continue to get compensated. But the guys who provide UPI and other kind of digital payments, it's very difficult because they are just a last leg of fulfilling a commercial transaction. I mean, what's your sense?
So you're right that so this is where I said at the end of the day, Harish, I think you have a very valid point, but at the end of the day, it's about volumes. Your transaction pricing will be dependent upon volumes and what more value adds that you can throw in. At the end of the day, your bit of a value adds that you throw in is going to get you more. But today, if you look at a classical UPI payment, maybe it's not going to cut your ice easily, but that's going to go, it's going to become competitive, it's going to get margin pressures are going to be, and you already have seen it. So it is all about how banks and these kind of fintech players come together and say that it's about how much of volumes you drive to the platform, how much of value adds you start to introduce as a part of your transaction processing. The day you do that, you will start realizing some benefits associated with it. And today, a lot of people are holding out on this because it's all about volumes. So if you have volumes, you know for sure you have data. And if you have data, it's all about saying what can you do to better monetize the data to be able to do something better. Otherwise, you're just doing a straight through processing kind of a pass through, and that pass through is not going to help you make much money. So you're right, Harish. If you ask me, in its vanilla form, the answer is probably not much, but it's all about what you top up to it and how you're going to probably use the data better. That's going to help you make more money. Otherwise, it's just going to be simple transaction where your basis points would be, today we've seen it crashing down to 4 paisa, 5 paisa kind of, which is not going to help. It's all about volumes and the gameplay around data.
Thank you, Mahesh. Thank you, Mr. Tripathi, and thank you, Harish, for the question. So coming back to our line of questions that, our line of discussion that we were having, Mahesh. So business model and technology innovations are the key to create, any new revenue streams. We were talking about revenue streams and profitability before we, asked the participants to come directly to you. What is the most effective manner in which banks can drive both technology and business model innovation?
So I would say the banks can drive technology. So at the end of the day, banks has to decide. So each bank has their own strategy as to what they're looking at. Where are they going to focus themselves? Let's take a bank who's going to focus on SME business, MSME business, and that's going to be the bread and butter. So then it's all about saying what kind of technology, forget the core bank. The core is important for their processing accounts and everything. But it's all about trying to create how we are going to garner the business in the front end and in terms of outreach to these SMEs, and how are they going to deliver that? So what is that linkage that they're going to do? Typically, now whether you're going to have a supply chain kind of an integration, and that's going to be very good for an MSME, right? How are you going to build those? Can you probably take on some of what the MSME cannot do today for you? Like, for example, some of the expense side of the stories, some of the case in terms of how you do integrations with the entire warehousing part of the story, or how do you enable some of these MSMEs sell their goods in a particular kind of a model. So I would say that banks, once they decide their entire strategy of their business, there is going to be very interesting combinations that will emerge across uh, with a lot of partner companies. And I would say partner because it's all going to be collaborative. You can't say that it's going to be we only, that I myself as a bank going to do everything. It's not going to happen. It's all about saying, how do I leverage the relationship better? How do I start to make accountability with each of them? Now, there has to be a joint accountability in that game plan. And once you do that, in my view, the contractual obligations will start to change. Today, we have a very vanilla contract which says that you deliver X service, you get X money, and you're out of the door. If you don't deliver the service, I hit you with payments and I hit you with reductions and penalties. But it's all about once you start changing the contractual obligations to say how you're going to stay invested, how you're going to change the game for me and be a part and make those 2 or 3 partners becoming a part of their business strategy way forward. I would say that some of the models will start to game change itself in the next 1 year or so. It will start to evolve. I would say it will start to evolve. The moment it evolves with 1 or 2 banks coming into that play, or 1 or 2 players starting to do that, you will see the shift. And that's when everyone will jump onto it to say, okay, what do I do differently? How do I think differently? And players in the product and the technology PSP side, payment service providers, also need to keep their mind open in terms of how they collaborate, how they can do the modernization for banks and make that story more stronger. You cannot say, I will just provide a Me Too service and make money out of it. It's never going to happen. That modernization theme has to be a combined effort. And to me, that's going to make the game changer for a lot of us.
Okay, thanks, Mahesh. So, that brings us to this question of, banks being the custodian of account, money, and payment process to their account holders. And we had some other subject matter experts who had said that, it's possible that banks who have been doing everything for a customer may just end up being, having a lot of accounting work to do. And it's not necessary that what's happening today from a customer point of view, whether the bank is owning a customer, the bank may not own a customer tomorrow. It may be a fintech company or some retailer or somebody, and he's taking only some services from the bank. Do you see that coming through?
I would say at the end of the day, so whether it is a retail player or whatever, at the end of the day, as yet, where does the money still lie? The money is still going to lie in a relationship, in an account relationship. And currently, where the construct of our entire banking, it is still going to be with someone. And you're always going to keep the money with someone where you believe your money is going to be safe, right? And that today, that relationship is with the bank. What banks will end up having to do is not to define, not to deliver by itself everything. And that's where I said it's partners. But what's more important is banks to effectively look inwards on its data that it is collecting over time and try to monetize the data for its own client experience. And that's going to be the challenge, whether it's corporates, whether it is retail, whether it is wholesalers, whichever way you look at it, they have the wealth of information. Today, I don't see many banks really utilizing the data smartly to be able to monetize it more effectively for themselves. If they are doing it, great, but at least the few that I bank, I have not seen it happening. So I would beg to see someone coming across and saying, no, you're wrong. In my opinion, the day they do that, that'll be a quite game changer. So will banks survive? I would say bank will change its flavor over the next 5 to 6 years. They will change its flavor. Not all banks will survive the way it is. So the faster they're trying to see where they should concentrate and how they should look at it, I think they'll probably be in the longer run of the game.
Okay. So you did mention that banks will continue to play the holder of money. But there has been some dilution there. If you see, mobile wallets have come into being. And so, money is just not with the bank, it's also with the mobile wallet. And I'm sure with the digital banks and some other banks coming in, you may see that it's the holding of money need not be the monopoly of banks. If you You see that, or?
Well, see, wallets and everything are good, but the wallets will only be so will only be 1/10 of what you want to hold in a bank account, right? It is more of a spend, small ticket spend. It is never going to be a large ticket spend or medium-sized ticket spend. And today, unfortunately, the experience that the common man has had with mobile wallets has been the fact that a lot of the mobile operators have disappeared. Now, so what happens? We've had some very big ones who've gone down under or probably are in serious trouble even today. So what any customer, any user of mobile wallet will only keep probably less than 1/10 of what they want to spend into that particular wallet. And they'll probably keep moving funds as they want. They may not move it out, but they will move in. So that situation, I would still see banks holding the bulk of it. And wallet service providers are only going to be enabling specific transaction capabilities. I don't see them being holding a large funding. Where they really bring the game, get themselves to the game is the volumes. And because they start to innovate at the front end and in terms of their integration, which banks cannot do it on its own.
Okay. So I had a question on this on IIF, instant, invisible, and free. But before I take that question, I think I want to give priority to my participants. So one of the participants asked a question: what are the 3 points that you think would a payment company look to do in short, medium, and long term?
If I may ask for, if someone can just help me with repeat the question because I couldn't see it up. Sorry.
Yeah. What are the 3 points that you think would a payment company look to do in short, medium, and long term?
Okay, interesting. So in short term, I would say that any payment company will look to sustain what they have in terms of what they need to do to manage their business lines, whether it means optimizing their cost, optimizing a bit of the services, making sure that whatever revenue streams they have continue to exist. I think in the medium term is where you will start seeing payment companies beginning to put a lot of thought around how they will partner to innovate. And I use the word partner to innovate because if they end up only doing what they have to do, it's not going to work. So I would see a lot of the payment companies starting to put innovation as this genuine thought process, but with a decent level of partnership, collaboration, and partnership. I think in the long run, which is in 18, 24 months or 24 months, there will be consolidation. And I'm not expecting every payment guy to sit in the game plan as they start to ramp up and start to scale. You will see consolidation. Now, people may say consolidation will happen in medium term, maybe, but I would rather put it to say that people will continue to try and swim through a few 6 to 8 months to 11 months, but may start, say, 40% may not succeed. And that 40% may have very good technology skills, in which case consolidation will be the game. So between if you ask me, 3 months will sustain, 3 to 12 months will be to try and innovate, and 12 to 18 months will be to consolidate. I think that's the way I look at it. 18 to 24 months will be consolidate because you will not be able to survive them. That's my immediate thought. I would say a reaction rather than a response.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, that's fine. I come back to this topic of IIF, which is instant, invisible, and free. Why I'm bringing this topic is because we are talking in terms of revenue and profitability for the bank. So some of the payment experts say that the advent of IIF payment has posed challenges to banks. How can banks address the challenges of IIF payments?
See, banks will have to, when you look at the whole words of IIF, I think today it is all about It's all about what can you do. So I have a couple of things. Banks in its own, everything is today expected to be state of the art, frictionless, and possibly more importantly, at next to zero cost. So what's going to happen is banks are going to find alternative means of being able to get their, I would say, fees or margins. So which means that if they're going to, so let me put it this way. You walk into a store, and you start to uh, pick up goods and you start to check out. When you start to check out, and if it is, and if 40% of all the payments are being done using our mobile app, and if the bank has a very good, I would say, agreement with that particular store, he or she can get better cut out of it. And there can be better bits out of it that they can earn. So they will start to see of mass enablement uh, and innovation coming in through very low cost but agile footprint, where the banks will end up starting to put their money in is to try and start. I know I've repeated it too often, so I'm not going to tell again, but it's all about saying who can they work with, how can they start to play this whole game of scale, and how can they get a better customer experience. So to me, these are some of the areas the bank will look at, because everyone is going into that instant, invisible, free kind of an approach. It's made its own, it's posed its own challenges, but banks will start to create its partnership models. While bank will focus on risk practices. So where we should bank look at? Banks should look at risk practices, should look at in terms of the monetization of data. These are areas that bank will really focus itself on. Once they do that, I would say that they throw open the game plan. And you alluded to a very important point, which is open banking. So with the advent of open banking, why will a bank control front end? Sometimes I ask the question, why will a bank need to control front end? Banks will have its partner control the front end and provides experience. Bank will say, you give me data, I will essentially tell you what this person will do better now. And whoever wants to take the data, I will make money out of it. It's typically what you do with today an Amazon on Facebook. Change the game on its head. And I can see it working better for any bank. So where they should focus themselves is slightly different. Because today banks, they do is now they focus very extensively on controlling the front end experience. That's not going to work for them always. They have to change that on its head in terms of saying, I enable that. Whoever does it, I will have a data element on terms of analysis of the data, providing the kind of feed, and whoever is going to take that feed is probably going to get the transaction better, and I will monetize the data from that and the income from that.
Okay, yeah, that's interesting, Manish. So so we did talk about cards and moving away from cards to apps. So we very clearly payments are moving away from the confinement of a piece of hardware and a card to some form of app on your mobile or any other media that's available, and equally allowing businesses to sell anywhere using digital payment acceptance. So we had cards, then we had apps. Now, do you foresee change from apps to something else that's coming up? Have you heard about something that's moving away?
Well, we've invested heavily in wearables, as I was telling last time. I see some very interesting movements happening. So you're going to have wearables, which will essentially, not everything is going to be again touch based. So you're going to have today a lot of the watches and a lot of other areas are getting very intelligent, and people would have wallets probably loaded into your mobile, which is connected to your wearables, and it works. So you're going to see some very significant retail side payment changes on newer technologies that's going to be in the in terms of how you're going to morph itself. Wearables is one big area that is starting to emerge. We have not seen it in India much, but yeah, I mean, with the current state, as we emerge out of the current state, if there are one or two companies who are going to collaborate with Xiaomi's of the world or the Fitbits of the world, and which would transaction acceptance in the endpoints, you're going to see transaction volume start to scream around.
Okay. Yeah. So a question from participants: how Visa or MasterCard will earn revenue in case of virtual transactions?
How Visa or
MasterCard will earn revenue in case of virtual transactions. If they don't use card, perhaps that's what he's asking. If they don't use cards, and how will they get the revenue from some other way?
So that is why they're going into central infrastructure, right? The Visa and MasterCard are starting to see that cards will start to dip. So they will essentially be the routing agencies for the central infrastructure. So at the end of the day, what happens? Today, whenever the card, there is an interchange happening, and the interchange is coming because they are acting as the interchange processor. So tomorrow, if there is an UPI is going to change itself as a UPI plus some other platform, which is called as payment interface, which is account to account, which is done by Visa, MasterCard as the controlling authority. They're going to make money there because they're going to switch transactions. So today, if you look at MasterCard with VocaLink, they're doing so many central infrastructures where they're supporting ISO 20022 based RTP systems. So when you do that, where do they earn their money? They earn their money by bringing their settlement, by transaction switching and settlement, and providing their faster payments interface. It all changes from country to country. So they are seeing the revenue stream change. I think kudos to them that they started to look at how much more value adds that they can do to that kind of an infrastructure to play the game better. For example, if you look at MasterCard, they've looked at TransferWise. Why did they pick TransferWise? There is huge remittance opportunity. That corridor is being unexplored and starting to emerge now. But the moment you get into that kind of game plan with real-time payments, the combination is fantastic. And then you will have cross-border payments also latching onto it. So I think each of them are upping their game, while card is definitely still their core play. With all the plays that they are looking at, I think their strategy is a bit different. So they will still aim to make the same money. Look at most of the Visa MasterCard engagements. They've started to play in the central space, which is a very game changer space.
True. So Mahesh, so that brings us eventually to another phenomenon, that is the cryptocurrencies.
Mm-hmm.
Can they disrupt and change the existing system?
Well, I would see it changing for sure. Maybe in the next India will also change. If you ask me, if you look at RBI, it started, the frameworks are there. They just didn't want to jump onto it because we didn't have the SOPs to manage it better. So, and the risk processes to support it. So I think with possibly, hopefully, with the NUE and alternative payment mechanisms that RBI is today putting out, if they allow cryptocurrencies to be, the RBI could be the central authority for it, but enabling the whole chain and settlement associated with it, if it is somewhere there, why not? So I would say that it's about a year and a half, 2 years away, but it will start small, but it will pick up very, very fast. So that's going to be a next space. And I'm saying, maybe you won't have Visa, MasterCard calling it as their card, but you'll have a cryptocurrency itself in its own form, creating an acceptance, right? So once that comes in, it will be very different. The moment you get front-end acceptance of using cryptocurrency to pay for your daily needs.
Yeah, I think that's a complete change that you will see, because you don't need any more a commercial bank, or don't.
That's
or
going to change here.
and a card platform either, right? So you don't need either, which is like so much we use on a day-to-day basis. So both will go away, perhaps, we don't know. So that's a big change that may come with cryptocurrency. I think the days will tell us how these changes are coming up. It's almost 4 o'clock, but Mahesh, just bear with us for another 2 3 minutes. Let me ask one more question come from YouTube. How challenging for banks competing with Google and Amazon while one entity is procuring technology, uh, the other is manufacturing technology?
Collaborate.
Yeah,
I would
I
say
think
there
that,
is only one word I will use.
yeah,
You have to learn to collaborate, learn to see, because Google and still don't hold funding. No, they still don't hold the cash. The cash is still with the banks. So the bank should start to see how it has to preserve its cash and try to see how it can better collaborate with all these players to start to weave itself. That how do each bank start to protect its turf in terms of holding funds onto itself, but essentially um, work with all these players to monetize data better. And I'm saying the day that happens, it'll be brilliant. They're going to innovate. Means everyone is going to innovate. Banks' innovation will be about how they continue to hold the, the balance in their accounts, and be innovation about how you are able to help change the mindset of its own customers and understand that better. I would say first understand and then collaborate better. So, for example, if anyone knows how, if someone is spending on, say, Google App Store every day morning at 8 o'clock or every Sunday at 8 o'clock in the morning because he or she has just woken up and thinks I have a better game plan to play, uh, does any bank really look at it and figure out, okay, I have, say, 60% of transactions coming in around this time, and what is happening there? So is there some launch happening which is essentially creating the buzz? And what can I do? Can I throw in a bit more freebies there to be able to divert attention to use my card or or the bank account better? So those are some things which will start to change. I think, and the day that changes, it's going to be disruptive for everyone, and the bank will continue to retain the balance in the account,
absolutely.
or balance,
Uh,
or it can have a credit account. At the end of the day, create a small credit on the fly and try and see how you can. So it's all going to be the spend patterns. At the end of the day, bank needs to know it still holds that data.
yeah. So would you say that it's all about partnership and collaboration? Uh, that's what's coming up in the future.
Yeah, the strategy, partnership, collaboration, and data management. I think there are 4 areas that I keep pushing to my own team.
Yeah. And thank you, Mahesh. I think again, Mahesh, we had a wonderful discussion. Lots of good points that came out of that. So some of those points, I think I'm sure the participants have noted it down. Something to look forward. I think exciting times are ahead of us with the partnership and collaboration, and wearables, which is something Mahesh again said. The days of wearables are coming. So I think, in all, a lot of excitement in store for fintech companies ahead, and for others, of course. So Mahesh, once again, I would love to thank you. We are at the end of our show. Thank you very much for coming. Uh, like I said earlier, uh, uh, Roti Bank is a non-profit uh, food rescue organization. It's one of the organizations which is right in the forefront, along with the COVID warriors out there. Uh, the Mumbai Roti Bank initiative is driven by visionaries and enthusiastic teams who are all set to scale up the activities significantly. Have a look at the video, and I think you will be able to appreciate why EPS is sponsoring uh, Roti Bank. It's a distribution is tremendous. It's a 1 million meal daily distribution uh, happens at Tata Cancer Hospital. Can you imagine at that particular place? There's a lot of food distribution happening, and that's one of the places where the poorest of poor come for treatment. Roti Bank is also in Navi Mumbai. To increase our reach from Mumbai, they have the Roti Bank has moved to Navi Mumbai. So, we want you to join the battle And we also want you to help us out, help Roti Bank if possible, with your contacts, with your collaboration, with your donation to them. I think PPS is proud to be a sponsor of Roti Bank. Thank you so much. Thanks for being part of this session. It's been one great knowledgeable session that we've had, and hope to see all of you with big numbers in the for tomorrow's session. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care.